Probably one of my most controversial gaming opinions is that I really don't like the first 3 PlayStation DualShock controllers. My first problem is how cramped my hands feel holding these things. The weird arches on the back make me do some weird T-Rex claw grip thing that I don't like at all, and I have pretty small hands, so I could just imagine how miserable this would be if you had big hands. The D-pad on these controllers I've always felt has never gotten enough flack for being really bad. It's this oddly stiff hunk of plastic broken into separate directions for some reason. I still remember getting blisters on my thumbs from playing Tekken 5 as a kid because of this thing, so not a fan of it either. Another thing that I dislike is the thumbsticks. They've never been tight enough for me. I played GameCube the most as a kid, so that thumbstick's tightness and precision is what I'm used to. The DualShock always felt way too loose to me and less precise as a result. Lastly, and this is really just me being petty at this point, is that I've never liked the buttons on these controllers. They're too low profile for my preference. I also feel like I have to push them down really hard to get my inputs to work, especially when playing racing games, and that's never fun. Also, I wish the buttons were quicker. Again, I'm being petty here, but this is my opinion, so feel free to disagree if you want. So, in summary, I want a PS2 controller with high-profile buttons, tight analog sticks, a normal form factor with no weird arches, a good D-pad, and quickie buttons. Also, if it could be wireless too, that would be great. Basically, I was hoping for a minor miracle to occur, and with the modern retro game controller companies mostly being focused on Nintendo products, I was confident that miracle would never occur. However, despite my skepticism, one company would eventually step up, and that company would be Retro Fighters with their Defender controller for PlayStation 1, 2, 3, Switch, and PC. Now, a long time ago, I reviewed the Retro Fighters Brawler 64 controller, and while I don't think that video I made for it is particularly good, I ended up being pretty underwhelmed by it because I felt it was too much money at $40 US. I also felt like there were better alternatives on the Nintendo 64 controller aftermarket scene, and that it just wasn't worth the rather steep price tag. So before I forked over the $50 for this controller, I set my expectations a little lower than I normally would. Boy, do I regret that now, as this has become easily the best controller I've ever used for the PlayStation lineup of consoles. For starters, the design for this controller is great. It's modeled after modern controllers, in particularly the Switch Pro controller, so it abandons the weird ridges of the DualShock controller in favor of a nice, sleek, open back design. This means no more weird T-Rex claw grip while holding the controller, which also means no more hand pains after holding the controller for a while. Next up, the thumbsticks. Again, they are modeled after modern controllers, so they're nice and tight. This just feels so much better and natural to me, and I'm sure if you've spent as much time on non-Sony platforms as I have, you will agree with me as well. The D-pad is no longer that weird, stiff, and hard piece of plastic broken into 4 pieces. It is now a nice, soft feeling plastic, and in the actual cross shape that every other D-pad has ever had. I seriously don't understand why Sony made their D-pad this way, but it really boggles my mind that they did, and still continue to do so to this day. Lastly is the buttons, which are raised up and no longer low profile, meaning that I don't feel like I have to press them down super hard to get an input to register anymore. Also, they are nice and quickie. Take a listen. Ah, it's like music to my ears. Oh yeah, also, did I mention that this thing is wireless too? Because it is, and it uses a USB-C charging port, meaning that it is more technologically advanced than the iPhone 14. Take that, Apple. Alright, so I've gushed about this thing pretty hard, but surely there must be a few downfalls to it, right? And I do have a few complaints with it, despite it being my new favorite PlayStation 2 controller. For starters, I found that the R2 and L2 buttons can be a bit too sensitive. It's a bit hard to describe here, but there definitely have been times in intense gaming sessions where I've barely pressed down either button and have them activate. It's not a huge issue, but I can see it being an annoyance to some people. Also, while I think the D-pad is a huge improvement over the DualShocks, I still don't think it's perfect. It definitely doesn't touch the Sega Saturn's controller D-pad, although to be fair, like, no other controller can really touch the Saturn's D-pad as it's basically perfection. Other than those complaints, I really don't have many problems with this controller. I said I think this is the best controller I've ever used for the PlayStation 1 through 3, and I meant it. So for a rating, I give the Retro Fighters Defender a perfect 10 out of 10. It's rare when I give that rating out, but I really do believe this is a product completely worth its asking price of $50 US. I highly recommend checking this controller out if you, like me, never liked the DualShock line of controllers. So that's going to do it for today's video. If you enjoyed it, please like it down below. If you want to see more of my content in the future, please consider subscribing for more. Finally, if you have any video suggestions, let me know in the comments down below. And until next time, have a wonderful day or night whenever you're watching this, and peace, y'all.